The Shark Deck.
Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news from LateBot. Happy Mother's Day. It's the one day of the year where we all pretend we're going to clean out our rooms and do the dishes without being asked. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. It's that special day where we celebrate the women who brought us into the world and made sure we didn't burn down the house with our experiments in the kitchen. On Mother's Day, we honor the women who taught us the meaning of unconditional love, patience, and how to guilt trip our siblings into doing chores. On Mother's Day, we celebrate the women who gave us life, who made us who we are, and who still remind us, wear a jacket when it's cold outside. Last week on the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe was speaking to Pauly Shore. Pauly Shore's mom, Mitzi Shore, owned the legendary Comedy Store. They started talking about owning a comedy club. Joe said, I'd always tell people, be nice to comedy club owners because you don't want to be one. He says the biggest stress of the new club has been wrangling lineups. Joe said, I had to talk with myself about it like, do you really want to take this on? You don't want to be some person hoping that this guy shows up or that he wasn't doing coke last night and he's not on a 2-day bender, he misses his flight, or he didn't sleep. There are so many factors dealing with your livelihood if you're a club owner. People get too drunk, they're crazy, they do this, they wreck the hotel room, and you're constantly putting out fires. Marc Maron told KCRW, I recently worked with Maria Bamford up in Canada. We were in the same venue. I've known her forever, and I've always sung her praises, but she's still working at the top of her game, and it's a game that no one else can play. It's deep. It covers everything in a way that's just totally inspired and unique to the point where you watch her, and I'm like, why am I even doing comedy? Stephen Wright put out a novel. It's called Harold. The Washington Post took a look. Harold is the title character. He's a 7-year-old boy attending his 3rd grade class in suburban Massachusetts in 1965. Harold's teacher is reminding him to remember his upcoming assignments, but he's the kind of kid who isn't going to get boxed in by assignments. He's smart, but psychically entirely off the grid. Stephen Wright explains he did more thinking than someone his age or any age. The book collects many of Harold's thoughts, which are very Stephen Wrightian. For example, wouldn't it be great if he had a pair of glass-bottom shoes that he could wear on the glass-bottom boat with no socks on it, so if fish looked up, they could for the first time in their lives see bare feet that weren't in the water? Harold wondered if bird angels would have 4 wings, or one more, being in love was like being on a seesaw where one side contained nitroglycerin. Washington Post says Stephen Wright's reading of the Harold audiobook is much like a stand-up, deliberate, deadpan, and leavened just a bit by his thick Boston accent. Jim Gaffigan told Cracked, with stand-up comedy, there was a moment when I started headlining where before the show, I'd be in the backstage area watching the show and people would be looking past me. They didn't even know I was headlining. Then after the show, when they saw me, they'd be like, oh my gosh. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting how people treat you differently, but they're impressed by the show. It's not me. I was the guy on stage that was saying some funny things with the microphone. It's not me, but eventually I started thinking, well, it was me. Hey, great news. Another Adam Sandler movie. That's what the world needs. This one co-stars Idina Menzel. It's called My Bat Mitzvah. Coming to Netflix August 25th, so you want to take that last week of the summer off and stay home and watch this thing. In My Bat Mitzvah, Stacy and Lydia are BFFs who've always dreamed about having epic bat mitzvahs. Okay, cool, but things start to go comically awry when a popular boy and middle school drama threaten their friendship and their rite of passage. Now listen to this cast. Not only does it star Adam Sandler, but it also features Jackie Sandler, Sadie Sandler, and Sunny Sandler. Meanwhile, in the UK, TV channel Dave has ordered a 3rd season of David Mitchell's Outsiders. I've been watching a lot of Mitchell and Webb lately. I went looking for clips one night, and now YouTube keeps putting them in front of me, and people have made these compilations of like, here's all the good clips from season 3. I'm not sure how that works from a legal perspective. Like, okay, you just took clips and put it together for an hour, and you get the ad revenue? Not sure how that works. Mitchell and Webb is fantastic. If you've never seen it, why don't you type Mitchell and Webb into your YouTube? Anyway, in Outsiders, a 6-part series, comedians have to demonstrate their survival ability in a number of challenges. These are jokingly contrived to test whether they have the skills to form a new society in the wild. Mitchell said, how brilliant that David Mitchell's Outsiders is coming back for 3rd series and that I get the chance to put more comedians through their survival paces. I can't wait to see them flail around in the outdoors in a way that is both hilarious to watch and carries with it the darker truth that should society collapse, most of us are in for long, agonizing deaths. Plus, there'll be lovely cutaway shots of wildlife, which you don't get in any other panel show.
Do you love your Peloton?
Oh, I sure do.
Well, I know you do because you started a podcast about one. If you love your Peloton and can't get enough of it and all the news that goes along with it, you should check out our show. It's called The Clip Out. It's a great place to go for instructor news, new classes, motivational tips, corporate machination.
We don't just tell you the news, we also give you our thoughts on why things are happening. And each week we also interview a member of the Peloton community. Sometimes it's, somebody like like me, just a regular person riding their bike.
Sometimes it's snucking.
You never know.
You never know.
The Clip Out is about anyone who loves their Peloton.
Every week we take you behind the scenes and inside the world of Peloton. The Clip Out is available wherever you get your podcasts, or check out our website,
theclipout.com.
I was hoping to do more for Mother's Day. I didn't really see too much. Here's one from The Guardian. The headline, "The Comics Motherhood Can't Stop." Josie Long said, "Before I had kids, I swam in an ocean of time. I did a lot of touring, was away for long periods. If I wanted, I could write all night. I slept in all the time. When I started in comedy, I was on the sharp end of a lot of sexist stuff. I was told over and over that women's bodies are disgusting and women's experiences are niche. So it was wonderfully liberating to do a story about childbirth." Jessica Fostekew has a 7-year-old son. She recalls what things were like when she was pregnant. She said it was 50-50 whether a woman in comedy went public about a pregnancy. "I watched my elders hide theirs and panic. Then I watched a few brave women smash through that." There's a podcast. It's called Funny Mummies. Mummies, like Egyptian, or how the Brits say mom, mummies. Funny Mummies. It gives comedians a space to discuss these issues. It is hosted by Hattie Ashdown, who's a comic. Hattie says it's about mums in comedy being open and honest and not feeling like you've got to lie or hide that you've had kids. I wanted to find out how comedian mums juggle it all. She believes gigging is not a level playing field, as it's assumed that female comedians are responsible for their child care. She says male comics are booked over female comics. We need more dads saying, "I've got to work out a babysitter." In Chicago tonight at Zany's, and recently I posted a photo of myself across the street from Zany's, having nothing to do with this, the Bad Moms of Comedy, MOMZ, are playing at Zany's tonight at 7. I wanted to find out more about the Bad Moms with a Z of comedy. Hey, Bad Moms, you got to update your web game. I couldn't even figure out your names. I figured out one of the moms, couldn't figure out the rest. No details, don't know what the show is about, don't know who you are. Come on, step it up. I want to support you. Are you heading to the Dubai Comedy Festival? Well, good. Zahir Khan is playing there today. Zahir is one of India's new generation of stand-up comedians and YouTubers. He won Comedy Central's India's Best Stand-Up Comedian. He's even the co-host of a comedy news channel. Wait, so he's the Indian me, but funny? Okay, cool. I like this guy. By the way, the show's in Hindi. And this next story I saw in the LA Times, really compelling. We're going to go on a ride here, so buckle up. Kyle Ayers came up with a show called Boast Rattle. I did not misspeak. Boast Rattle. It's a head-to-head compliment-based take on roast battle. So instead of ripping each other, you compliment each other. Crowd members get to vote up to 2 times per person each round, and winning names get added to a championship bout to battle for the Belt of Flowers. Before kicking off Boast Rattle, Ayers pauses to set a complimentary mood. He said, "I'm going to get into the boasting spirit and talk to you guys about a brain disease I have called trigeminal neuralgia. It's like a nerve exploded at the base of my brainstem, and there's a lot of negative about it, but I was trying to think of the good parts of having a degenerative brain disease." He unveils a keynote presentation called Kyle Boasts His TN. In the presentation, it said it's called suicide disease. Might sound like a negative, but it's only called that because it is the highest rate of suicide of any medical ailment. Other slides include I was dead for 10 minutes, cool scars, and I win chronic pain support groups. The LA Times writes, by the second round of Boast Rattle, Ayers sits on stage right next to Judge Guy Branum. While 2 contestants begin complimenting each other, Ayers' jaw works up and down and side to side. He massages the right side of his head. His eyebrows raise in pain. After the show, he can barely talk. That night was the first time he addressed his TN on stage, and he's happy with how it went. Producer Catherine Swope said, "It's amazing to see the response. It's easy to write jokes about dating or a bad boss, but it takes a special alchemy to make light of something as dark and serious as his brain condition." Back in Brooklyn at Spike Hill, Ayers ran Game Night, a comedy show. Comedians on stage played everything from Monopoly to Mad Libs to Family Feud. People that worked with him back then talked about wee bee spelling, bee spelled like the insect wee bee spelling, a drunken spelling bee meets fundraising event. That happened back at the Knitting Factory, and they said he was always the smartest guy in the room. He's so witty about creating concepts and brainstorming ideas and being able to execute everything. He also began noticing in his headaches back then. Doctors thought the pain was something dental. Dentists couldn't find anything. Long comedy sets made him tick and twitch. The pain could make him pass out. Lights and wind to hurt. At its worst, TN keeps Ayers away from comedy and from people altogether for months at a time. He says it's very interruptive. It's spending a lot of time on the kitchen floor, keeled over and crying and freaking out. One doctor scan finally found something. It was determined to be non-cancerous. But that was the end of the diagnosis. He was in and out of urgent care. One of his friends said, I've seen him 5 minutes before he goes on, crying. The pain is so bad. Then he wipes the tears off his eyes, took a big breath, put a smile on his face, and crushed it. He comes off stage, and he's so weak, but he doesn't show it on stage. He's a true professional. It reminds me of Andy Kaufman going through cancer and doing his last shows, or Bill Hicks having cancer, but still puffing cigarettes and talking smack. Doctors finally entertained the possibility of TN. Ayers was told it's a rare disorder occurring mostly in elderly women. As he describes it, it's an improperly functioning cranial nerve triggers pain receptors in his brainstem to feel like I'm getting stabbed and electrocuted at the same time in the right side of my face. He said channeling his darkest challenges into positive art would create his most personal and challenging material to date. You want to find a through line and something that's not just like me being sad, talking about sad stuff and riffing off it? When the pendulum of my mental state swings towards optimistic, I see a show. I think there's something to it eventually. When it swings back in the other direction, no, I don't think I'll be around when this would be a developed show. If this is life every day. Wow, that just sounds awful. Kyle Ayers, I wish you well. That's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Happy Mother's Day. See you tomorrow. All right, here's the pitch. 5 stories. They're all good news. It's called 5 Good News Stories. No negative news, just good news. Nice, easy way to start your day. Hopefully a smile. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac, host of 5 Good News Stories. You get the premise? There's 5 stories, and they're all good news. So the number 5, Good News Stories. 5 Good News Stories. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.